guys, how's it going? Today we're going to be working on trimming the fenders on this Sidekick. We added some bigger tires and now they don't clear. We got a trail slayer kit on the Sidekick, Toyota axles. These are 35-inch tires. We had 33 on it before. And now it'll hit right here and rub just a little bit. So the main thing that I look for is I don't want to cut this whole fender unless I have to. Right, it's welded up under here. This is your seam. So by cutting this away, you lose your seam without welding it or doing something to reattach it. I'm not going to reattach it. I'm just going to run it. It'll have enough strength, I figure. With just these welds that are left, it'll be fine. So one of the things I like to do is put tape on and kind of draw my line out. I just try and match the arc, but make it a little bit bigger, is what I try and do. And then just for sakes of keeping things semi-even, I kind of measure off of a body line or something. I don't know if you can, yeah, you can see that body line. So I measure off the body line right here. And it's roughly, 6.5 inches. So we'll just kind of remember 6.5 inches, or we can grab us a pencil. Found a pencil. It took a little bit, but we got one. Nice little happy birthday pencil here for us. So before I cut this, I'm going to cut it like this, all in one cut. Some people like to cut it every inch or half inch. And then they try and bend, just take a hammer or something, and actually bend the metal back. I won't be doing that. When you do that, it kind of has a tendency to chip your paint, everything else. If you do try and do it that way, try and use a heat gun or something to heat it up and then bend it. That's what most guys do when they flare the fender out the other way for little short squatted cars. When they roll it, they'll actually heat it to try and keep your paint from cracking or chipping, breaking off. So yeah, so I'm just going to cut this in one smooth motion. We're going to go do the other sides, and I'll show you how I kind of lay it out when we get to the other sides. So hang tight.
Now, another important part to remember to all this is when you're cutting your fenders, you are forever changing your car. That seam that we're cutting through, it keeps the two body panels together, keeps moisture out, everything else. So by cutting that and removing those welds without replacing them, you could see future issues. So just know that going forward that there could be unforeseen consequences for doing this. I'm going to show you a little later in this video the best way that I seal this back up. I usually just use some silicone something just to prevent moisture from getting in between the body panels. The correct way would totally be re-spot welding that Bondo paint, the whole thing, but I'm not going to do that for a rock crawler. So some people might, they really care how it looks and everything else, so they might do that. Another thing to note that I don't show in the video, remember after you do your trimming, before you put the molding on, that I'm going to show you here in a second, make sure you trimmed enough. Otherwise you're going to be pulling the molding back off and then recutting. I already knew I was good for the video. I did have to trim just a hair more, but not where I put the molding.
So what we have here is it's like a 3M, it's got 3M backing, so it's just stick-on molding essentially is all this is, and I'm going to link it in the video so that you guys can find this. essentially what we're going to do is we'll unstick it and put it along this edge all the way along, and it gives you a little bit of wiggle room to hide any little imperfections along the way. And we'll go the whole way, maybe back to right there, and trim it or wherever we think looks good. So,
and it's important to note right here, make sure you clean the surface. You kind of saw me wipe it down. Just make sure it's clean so that that's going to stick the best it can. Worst comes to worst, it's not crazy expensive, so if this ever peels off or something happens with it, I'm just going to buy some more and replace it. That's why I like it. It's cheap, it's easy, it's not something if you get snagged on a tree limb or a branch or anything else, it's going to rip off and possibly take the body panel with it. That's one of the reasons I use it. So, and it's overall it's pretty durable stuff. It's kind of in the shape of an L, so it kind of covers the cut a little bit under there, so you don't have a super sharp edge. It's not going to save your tire if your tire hits it. You know, if you ever rub, it's not going to do anything like that. But for your hands or anything else, it just makes that edge a little bit nicer. But it's really good stuff. It's just cheap, fast, and easy, so it works really good.
So one of the things that I like doing is I like taking some sort of contraption, whatever it is that you decide to use. This way I'm not measuring a ½ inch this whole way. I'm going to put this up here. I'm going to start, that's where we're going to end. I'm just going to grab it right there. We're just going to run this right down the body. And then by doing this, I don't know if we can see the line, maybe not. Roughly, we're going to follow that line. Just gives us a good reference while we're going at it. And I'm just going to draw this in up here, this curve.
So another thing to note here, guys, is that you don't really need to worry a lot about your lines matching from side to side. Nobody's going to go around and measure this and make sure that you did it right. So there's really no worry on making it match exact. You want it to be semi-close. That's why I use the bolt right there with a big washer on it, just so I can get the same distance on both sides, roughly. I'm not trying to be perfect with it, but another thing to note here, if you're doing a sidekick, really at the bottom there and all the way up to about the top, we don't have much more room than what I'm trimming that you could trim before you actually cut into your floor pan. That's one thing you really want to avoid when you're doing this. You don't want to cut that floor pan. I would consider moving your axle back further. The reason I don't move my axle back further is I'm going to roll my pinion up someday to help with some driveline angles there. So I need the room because I want to leave my gas tank where it is. I could move it, but this is for the family, you know, so I gotta be able to fit them in the back seat. And next here you're seeing the seam right here. That is the gap from cutting that seam open. There's probably a 1/4 inch gap here. It's not real crazy, but there is a gap there. And so you just saw me hold up the silicone that I use. It's kind of like a super glue silicone stuff. It's flexible, stretchable, all the great stuff, you know. And I'm just doing that so water, snow, ice, dirt doesn't get in between the body, doesn't really rust it out. I don't paint that. You could paint that right there too and then silicone it. You could silicone it before putting on the molding. I put it on after to kind of help with keeping the molding attached a little bit. I figure it adds just a hair bit of strength to help keep the molding on. Then I'm going to jump over to the other side, show you the other side here too. But I think that pretty much covers everything right there. Just remember to seal the seam whatever way you choose. Just make sure you get that seam sealed so it doesn't rust, because once it gets in between the body panel, you're in trouble, you know. So any type of silicone works, and it becomes kind of a maintenance thing, right? You should check this yearly and make sure the molding's still good. If you see little holes or gaps or anything, just grab some more, fill it quick, and you'll be good. Now we're going to jump over to the other fender and repeat the process again, just fill in that gap with some silicone. Just remember, it's pretty hard to mess this process up really bad, right? The hardest part is just being careful when you're cutting, not to cut too big of an ouch anywhere, right? The molding's about a 1/2 inch, so you got about a 1/2 inch. You can really mess up. After that, you're in trouble, right? So just remember that. Hopefully you guys were able to find something useful in this video. Hopefully it's informative, has some sort of info that's useful to somebody out there. We have future videos that I'm going to make. The next one you'll see is a front bumper being built for this. I already have a front bumper on it. That's not really anything special, but we're going to put a Warren 8274 on the front of this. And so if you guys want to stick around or think this is useful info for you, yeah, stick around, subscribe, like, whatever. So thanks for watching. Hope you guys enjoyed.